Hello everyone, I'm Perfume1322 and welcome to another GTA discussion video where we're going to be talking about the Pariah, the new, basically quickest sports car in the game, and if you're talking about top speed, the quickest car in the game full stop. And I'm also going to be going over the vehicles that we still got to come from the drip feeding that we got from this DLC, showing them off a little bit and giving some thoughts about them. So first of all, about the Pariah. The question has been asked a lot, and some people have even been expecting it in the comments on the testing videos, that the Pariah will be nerfed. That means basically that it will be made slower, or it will be moved into the Supers class, which is where it should be from a performance standpoint. But it won't. Trust me on that. The only time we've ever seen car changes are for bugs and with downforce as a whole. Now, in the case of the Pariah, it doesn't have any bugs that are causing it to be so quick, and it doesn't have any downforce. It just naturally has that amazing performance, which honestly wouldn't be such an outrageous level of performance if it was in the supercars class. I know I said in the video yesterday that they accidentally put it in the wrong class, but I was probably being too kind. It's not a coincidence that the car you now simply must own to be successful in sports races is the second most expensive sports car in the game. Rockstar have never really been happy that the free Elegy was the quickest sports car, and people still don't think Rockstar have any shady pay-to-win style insidious business practices at all. But I digress. So Rockstar never changed the performance of a single vehicle without bugs, and this wouldn't be affected by a downforce change. But they also never changed the classes of cars either. They may make the Pariah usable in supercar races in the future, but it's not going to ever be removed from the sports class. We've seen that before with the Sterling GT becoming usable in regular sports races, for example, but it was never taken out of sports classic races, which is the class that it's officially in. From a performance standpoint, the Pariah absolutely is in the wrong class, but it's not the first time we've seen that with cars in this game. The class system at the moment is just a complete mess, and all cars now seem to end up in supers, sports, sports classics or muscle without pretty much any basis for what makes sense. They now just sort of throw everything into those four classes because they're the most popular. And, you know, imagine how diverse the coupes class could be, for example, if some of the now nearly 50 sports cars were there instead. We're even going to have an SUV in the sports class soon, as we'll see later on in the video. So yeah, the class system is a mess and it has been for a long time. It's never going to be changed, and Rockstar releasing a very expensive car that you simply must buy to be competitive is hardly new as well. But what about the other cars that we've got with the Doomsday Heist DLC? These will be getting released one by one in typical drip feed fashion over the next few months, but let's take a look at them and have a bit of a discussion. So still to come, we've got one supercar, 5 sports cars, 4 sports classic cars, 2 muscle cars and 1 off-road vehicle. So 13 vehicles in total, plenty of drip feeding still to go. I'm going to show them all here very quickly as I talk about them in depth and their potential performance, but I do need to give a big thank you to CoinDog for permission to use the footage that you're about to see. He has made in-depth customization videos on all of these new cars, so if you want to see full versions of the short clips that I'm going to be showing, head over to his channel. I will of course link it in the description. We also have a leak from Foxy Snaps about the order that we'll receive these vehicles from each website, from right to left and bottom to top. So the Autarch should be the first on Legendary Motorsport, with the Comet SR being last. Obviously the cars on Southern San Andreas will be mixed into that order some way as well, but we don't know which is going to be first out of, a car from one website and a car to the other. Now the reason I'm talking about these now is because I won't be able to do any advanced testing with them. Usually I do try to get some sort of advanced testing, early testing to give an indicator of performance for the vehicles that we don't have by going onto PC and modding them into the game. But I'm going to be heading to Sweden for Christmas and I won't have access to a PC to mod them in. I will have my PS4, so I'll be able to do the proper official testing when they are actually released, but I won't be able to test them early. So that's just why I'm going to go over them now and give a quick impression on performance. So I also, whilst I'm talking about these, I will be including some general thoughts from the community as well on the car's performance, from people who have tried them out a little bit now and tested them a little bit. And I'll talk about whether you should be saving your money for them or not. But as always, nothing is really final until the official testing videos when they actually release. So, subscribe to be notified of those if you haven't already, but I imagine most people watching this will have already subscribed. So, one supercar, we're only getting one more supercar with the drip feeding, and that is the Autark. Should be one of the earlier vehicles that we get from the drip feeding as well, and it's not too bad for supercars. It has some good stats for supercars, but from what people have said, it has a lot of understeer. So I don't think, based on what I've heard, this is going to be challenging the top 3. It could be in that top 10 area of supercars possibly, but it's probably not going to be on the pace of the Wagner, the RE7B, or the XA21. Those 3 are in a class of their own anyway. But, it's another interesting supercar to add to the list, and hopefully it's at least somewhere on the pace so it can be usable. But yeah, based on what I've seen, it's not going to be, right at that very top. So that's the only supercar. There's a few cars that are in the sports class that people have been thinking are supercars, but no, the rest are all sports cars or sports classics. So we'll deal with the sports cars next. The Comet SR is the second vehicle to have downforce from this DLC. The first one was the Autark. So only 2 vehicles that have downforce, and the Comet SR is kind of the same story as the Autark in terms of it does feel a little bit like it's going to be close to the top, but it's certainly not going to be the Pariah levels of lap times. It's going to be a good car, but it's not going to be that good. The Pariah just decimates everything. Probably we'll see this, often we see with the last vehicle from the drip feeding that it is actually better to make people spend all their money and then have to spend it all again on a better vehicle. But the Pariah is so overpowered now for the sport class. We might see that the Comet SR would have been the new number 1 if it wasn't for the Pariah, something like that. But ultimately the Pariah is just going to be leagues ahead of everything else in the sports class for a long time to come. So next up, the Neon. Quite a few people, I think this is the one that people thought was going to be in the supers class, but it is a 4-door car and it is a sports car, and it's an electric vehicle, so it doesn't get turbo transmission. I believe it's also all-wheel drive as well, so very similar to what the Cyclone is to the supers class. The Neon is going to be similar to the sports class, so probably really good acceleration, just not going to be competitive in a racing situation or in terms of top speed as well. Maybe it'll be challenging for the quickest 4-door car. We'll have to see when that comes out. The Revolta is a very interesting one because this is going to be one of the most expensive sports cars in the game, and by all accounts it doesn't seem that competitive. It's big, it's bulky, it's got a decent amount of power, but it's not going to be any good around the corners. It's kind of a weird car, and again, a weird vehicle to be putting into the sports class, but like I said, we're just seeing cars put in, shoehorned into supers, sports, muscle, and sports classics, even if they're not really meant to be there, at the expense of coupes and SUVs and sedans and things like that. So not really a lot to say about the Revolta. And speaking of misallocations of classes, we've got the Sentinel Classic, which is in the sports class for some reason. I don't know why it's not in sports classics. It's the Sentinel Classic. We have the Infernus Classic, the Turismo Classic, the Cheetah Classic. All of those are in the sports classics class, but the Sentinel Classic is in regular sports. So don't get that whatsoever. Again, it doesn't seem like it's going to be on pace with the top sports cars, and nothing is going to be beating the Pariah anyway. But it's nice to have that car back. I've always liked the Mafia Sentinel from GTA 3, so it's a great car to have, but you don't have to worry about it from a speed perspective or saving your money for it for racing. Basically, you don't need to worry about any sports car at this point. You just need a Pariah, which is why it's so expensive. Finally, for the sports class is the Striter, which is an SUV. Carrying on that theme of shoehorning vehicles into the wrong class, for some reason we have an SUV in the sports class. I don't understand it. Obviously it's not going to be competitive. Maybe it would have been competitive in SUVs, with the top vehicles there, but who knows? Because we'll find out obviously when the testing happens, but it makes no difference whether it would have been anyway, because it's in the sports class, so it's going to be quickly forgotten about, this car. I don't understand that whatsoever. So let's move on to the sports classics. We've got the GT500, which is a very beautiful car, I think, but are not going to be on the top level of Sports Classics pace, kind of more around that original Sports Classics level of lap time that you're used to seeing from, you know, things like the Monroe, the Coquette Classic, all that kind of stuff. It's certainly not going to be up there with the Turismo Classic, the Cheetah Classic. They've just basically moved the game on completely for the Sports Classics class, but an interesting vehicle nevertheless. The Z190 is pretty much the same story as that. It's not going to be on that top level of pace, but it's an interesting car again. The Sports Classics class is probably the best in terms of diversity of vehicles that are in it. It's a shame that they aren't... It's a shame in general for GTA that the classes aren't more split up, so we have lots of smaller classes that, you know, you can race against each other, but, you know, it's again another interesting vehicle. Next up, the Silvestre. That is from Anis, so it's very rare that we actually get a car from Anis. Obviously, we got the Elegy and the RE7B from them. Now we get the Silvestre, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as dominant as what the Elegy or the RE7B have been for their respective classes. It's kind of more of a rally car, so it could be on the same sort of pace as the Retinue and a different rally style vehicle that you can use against the Retinue in Sports Classics races, but not going to be totally competitive with the top in Sports Classics. And finally, we've got the Viserys, which is powerful, but it doesn't have an awful lot of grip, so it's not going to be on that top level of pace, but it might not be do too badly in terms of top speed. Whether it can be rivaling the Z-Type, don't really know. The Z-Type has always been the big one for Sports Classics. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, some interesting additions to the Sports Classics class. Even if none of them are on pace for a racing situation, they're at least interesting cars, and I think it's probably one of my favourite classes just for the diversity that it shows. It's just a shame that we can't race them together, you know, in a normal format more. But, you know, there's certainly a lot of events that you can do with Sports Classics cars that would be quite interesting because they all have their own unique ways of driving. So some good additions to wait for. Next up, two vehicles from the Muscle class, and both of these could be quite competitive. They're both quite similar to the Yosemite that we saw recently, which is obviously right up there at the top of the Muscle Cars class, just with the Pisswater Dominator. And the Hermes and the Hustler that we've still got to come from the Muscle Cars class do seem to be very similar, you know, in terms of the stats and the way that they handle and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, keep an eye out for those cars. Obviously, I'll be doing the testing as soon as they're released. We'll see if there becomes a few more options at the top of the Muscle Cars class, and that would be a great thing, because ever since the Sabre Turbo Custom, the Muscle Cars class has been a lot more boring than what it used to be when we had a wide variety of cars available. So two cars that are, you know, definitely ones to watch out for there. And finally, we have one more off-road vehicle to come, which is the Camacho. I haven't done the 2017 testing video for off-road yet, so, you know, the off-road testing won't happen right now for these vehicles, and you'll see it all together in what will be the 2018 video that will contain all the off-roads. So I'm not going to say much about its performance, but, you know, another interesting off-road vehicle. It would be nice if it was on that pace of the trophy truck and the Desert Raid at the top of the off-road class as it is now, if you don't include the bikes. But we'll just have to wait and see in the full-on off-road testing when it actually happens. So those are all the vehicles, you know, 13 different vehicles that we're going to be getting over the course of the next few months. It's a shame that we don't have all of these now. I mean, they're in the game. We downloaded it with the Doomsday Heist DLC. Just let us have them. But this is what Rockstar like to do now. So yeah, hopefully this has been an interesting and entertaining and informative video. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks for all the support recently on the videos as well. You know, as always, I really do appreciate all of your guys' support. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.